Want to tell you about one of our partners, Quetzal Education Consulting. Quetzal Education Consulting is a queer, Black, and Indigenous women-owned firm offering anti-racist consulting, PD, coaching, keynotes, workshops, and more. Their newly released Abolitionist Teaching Workshop series coaches and prepares teachers to further develop abolitionist practices in the classroom. Find out why they have been called the future of educational justice by Dr. Bettina Love. You can book a free consultation with Quetzal by calling 510-397-8011 or visiting quetzalec.com. That is quetzalec.com. And if you mention you heard about them through Two Dope Teachers, you will receive a 5% discount on their Abolitionist Teaching PD series. Once again, you can book them by visiting quetzalec.com on their Connect With Us page.
Done. That's it. Let me tell my story before I go.
Hello, folks. How is everybody doing? Welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, The Exit Interview.
That's right. Their favorite. Everybody knows.
How are you doing today, Dr. Lyons?
I can't complain. Got a little cold here. I brought back from Mexico City. I was partying too hard.
All right.
But I'm feeling good. No complaints whatsoever on this beautiful Sunday evening in October.
Yes. Well, we are glad to have everybody here with us tonight. We are blessed with a very special guest that I think we've, behind the scenes, Asia, Gerardo, and I have been really looking forward to sitting down with. We are fortunate enough this evening to bring you an exit interview with none other than the legendary Branta Lockett.
Woo! Thank you, legendary. That's
legendary. Yes, doing big stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying.
Yeah, you famous out in these streets. We've been trying to track you down for a little bit, so we're glad that you got a chance to come on and tell your story. For our audience, I know like quite a few folks may recognize Branta's name from BLM 5280 and her work there, and maybe some other folks in DPS might recognize her from there, and all other places within community. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and dive in. First question, Branta, our favorite. Tell us about your journey into education. How did you know you wanted to be an educator?
Okay, yeah, this is a complicated question. I will start by saying that my mom is a teacher. She's a music teacher, and she's been a teacher my whole life. And very early on, she was like, "You're not going to be a teacher." So we'll start with that.
Yeah,
I tell my daughter the same thing. My kids, I tell both of them, "Don't be a teacher."
Yeah,
whatever you do, don't be a teacher.
Yeah, don't be a teacher. Now she's like I told you so, right? But yeah, I think when I was in high school, I went to high school in Miami, Florida, and I was in the IB program there. And it was a majority Black high school. However, the IB program was not majority Black. And I experienced a lot of anti-Black racism, but it wasn't from white people. It was from people who identified as Latinx, right? So that was my okay, there are differences in education opportunities and how the resources that people are told about. And it was a lot of it, like my best friend and I, another Black woman, navigating it. Luckily, we had the help of our parents who are highly educated to help us through that process and to get into colleges and whatnot. But I really noticed the differences way back in high school. Fast forward, I graduated from Vanderbilt University and I didn't know what I was going to do. I ended up getting a major in African American studies and minored in European history. And from there, I was back home in Miami, 22, be like, okay, so what's next? And my mom's like, you're going to grad school. So I went to grad school, still not knowing what I wanted to do. So I studied cross-disciplinary studies. As a professor of mine told me from Vanderbilt, that's a complicated degree.
Like,
like,
okay.
"Who knows what that means?"
Now, what does that mean for our audience?
It's like interdisciplinary studies, but they say cross-disciplinary because I think there's I guess they want to be different. But a lot, like we talked about like conflict resolution. I learned a lot about like higher ed management and education. And yeah, it was kind of all over the place. However, my practicum took me to this nonprofit in Miami. And they had a lot, they provided wraparound services. It was ran by 3 Black women. And I helped them with their program that helped with young students who have been incarcerated or arrested for like minor offenses. And so like a part of their probation was to complete these like workshops with their parents. And so I gathered from like these youth that, again, I was seeing the differences in resources that were available to them. And at the same time, I was working at a Jewish school, a private Jewish school in Miami, right? So like, it was like in my face. And then on top of it, I was working as a tutor in a Title I school. And so like,
wow.
Yeah, it's the contradictions. Yep.
Yeah, I'm seeing all of these things. And I'm like, well, obviously like skin color was the biggest difference, right? Like how are they different from each other? But then like money, and then understanding how money can impact how your education looks and your life path. So at the end of that program, after talking to that professor who was like, you have this complicated degree from this school with this complicated name, she was like, you should look into like schools of education. So I was like, all right, let me look. And I ended up going to Brown and studying urban education policy. And that was an amazing program. But there I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to get into policy, I need to get in the classroom, right? Because I don't want to be like making decisions without understanding how school works. And that brought me to Denver, where my first teaching job was at a charter school in Denver. And it was horrific. Horrific. By October of my first year teaching, I knew that I didn't want to teach anymore. But I stuck it out. I stuck it out a bit longer. But yeah, that's how I got into teaching. It wasn't like something that I dreamed of as a little girl at all. It wasn't something that I was encouraged to do. It was just something that just like the steps just kept making sense that I eventually ended up in the classroom.
Talk about that experience, because I think right now, in terms of educational policy, like what was your experience and charter versus public, right? Because I think this is important because some people think, well, public schools have all the answers or charter schools have all the answers, but like, I think there's a complexity between it all. So tell us about that experience that you had at that charter school that made you realize by October, this is not for me.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what they did to me. So they had that no excuses model, and I was the only Black teacher on my campus at that time, and I was seeing the impact of their behavior management system and the impact it was having on students of color, particularly my Black students. And so I was like, I'm not doing all these things. I'm not giving kids checks. I'm not like making them sit and star. I'm not gonna, your shoe's untied till you have a check. You have these many checks now. You can't go.
Hold on. Hold on? And tell the people what STAR is. Cause I think people cause when we talk about like controlling Black bodies, explains what STAR is.
Yes. Sit up straight. You have to cross your hands on your desk, like pay attention. And and they also told the kids how to walk in the hallways. They used to walk on lines in the hallways of the school. And I remember going home winter break, watching Lockup. I used to love watching Lockup.
Yep.
Yes. The juvenile detention center. And I saw these kids walking on a line and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a jail. Like this school model is based on what they're doing in jails. And I was teaching kindergarten. So like, I was just like, I am not doing this to these babies. I was like, I went to school. I didn't have to sit this way. I didn't have to be told when to speak and not to speak, how to walk in the hallway with my hands by my side. And I turned out just fine.
Right.
And they were like, oh, really? Well, here's a growth plan. You have 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Get on board or we will let you go.
Okay, so we want to know what happened.
It was my first real job. So I kept my mouth shut and I did what they told me to do. It's, still not as to the fidelity they wanted me to, but I was like, let me do this so I can keep a job. I was new to Denver, my first apartment, all these things. So I was like, I couldn't afford to be let go, or so I thought at that time, right? Because Branta now would never.
Listen, oh my, and you know what's so interesting about that? You know, there's so many pieces to what you just said, right? Being able to afford to leave. This is my first job, like navigating that. We've had this conversation so many times, right, Kevin, about like how people negotiate that conversation. And it's a first year, yeah, for sure, right? Even at the 30th year, right? We a lot of times hear people saying, like, you know what, I've got to think about other things, like taking care of older parents or a para, or I got a kid, you know, in who needs like special things from, you know, like hospital care or whatever. And like all these things are the ways that systems are able to silence us. But I love that you said, but the Branta of today, like hell no. Yeah.
Not doing it.
Right. I was like, yeah, I wish, like, going back, I was like, yeah, I should have just kept doing what I was doing, let them fire me, collect the unemployment checks, and find the next job.
Move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So Branta, like you mentioned this thing, and I'm curious because I know there's a lot of Black educators in Denver who have the same story, who moved from someplace else to Denver. Can you talk about how you ended up in Denver as a Black educator?
It was super random. I came here during spring break when I was at Brown and to visit some friends. And I was like, oh, this is nice. I was like, the weather was nice. It was clean. I was comparing it to Rhode Island, not to Miami, but
yes,
like, oh, this is nice. So when I applied for jobs, I applied for a job in Florida, a job in Nashville, and a job in Denver. And I got all 3 offers and I chose Denver. I was like, let me do something different. And so that's how I ended up here.
Did the district did Denver schools, that, like, I know you're part of a charter, did they have any sort of like incentives for you as a Black educator willing to relocate?
No, but I will say the charter did pay for my moving expenses, and they gave me a signing bonus. And again, first real job, I was like, "Ooh, this is nice money." It wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like a great idea, and I was like, "Oh, they value me here. This is nice."
Yeah, no, I asked because, you know, I'm part of the Denver Classroom Teachers Association, and like one of the things that like we constantly think about is a BIPOC educator member of the union is how, and we're going to get into a question related to this, is how do we attract and retain Black teachers? But one of the like big solutions that the district has is, you know, we go to other places. We go to Atlanta, we go to Miami, we go to New Orleans, and we try to get these Black educators to move to Denver. And so, like, I always am curious about the experience of Black educators who move from places like that, you know, cities with much larger Black populations, and what their experiences is and how that plays out in their experience as educators in Denver.
Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting the schools to be filled with so many white adults. It's not like that in Miami at all. Like in Miami, I have Black principals, I have Black teachers, and I have other people of color. I mean, teaching like the AP classes, IB classes, like from elementary through high school, right? I was exposed to leaders of color, teachers of color. So when I came to Denver, I was like, oh, this is what we've been reading about.
Yes.
This is what they're talking about. Because it was definitely like, I was like, where are the Black teachers? Oh, I'm the only one in this building.
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So you didn't obviously stay in that position, and you've been like, you bopped around and had many different positions. So tell us more about that piece of it too.
Yeah. So then after that, I went to Ashley Elementary. They actually like reached out to me on LinkedIn, and it was 2 blocks from where I lived, and I didn't have a car at the time. So I was like, when they offered me the job, I was like, yeah. So then that got me into DPS for real, even though it's innovation school. And the first 2 years, I loved it there. The first 2 years, I taught 3rd grade, and I love the students. I love the community. Like, again, I like walked to school, which means that I saw my students a lot. Just like, And so, yeah, it was good. However, my third year there, I went to teach fifth grade. So I was like, I'm gonna teach the third graders that I had before. I'm gonna teach them again in fifth grade. Which I think would have been okay had like the leadership at the school been stronger. But that we had a new principal and a new assistant principal. And it was a hot mess. Like when I tell you that I was like struggling, like I felt like a first year teacher because I had like so many like students who just had like so many different needs. And I would reach out to administration who I thought, was there to support, would have answers, would have solutions. And they'd be like, yeah, we don't know what to tell you about that. Or it was like crazy stuff happening in my classroom, mostly from Black boys. And I think their thing was, look, we don't want to over discipline them. We don't want to. And so they end up being like no discipline, right? And then like having like those low expectations of them, and like, no, this is okay. Like, can we do more? We need to do more. And so it was a lot of me like making connections with families. But it was a tough year. And that was actually 2019, 2020. And when I tell you that, yes, the pandemic, devastating, but I was grateful to not have to go back to that classroom in March 2020, right? And it was like to the point, I talked to my therapist about it. It was like October, and like every week I had a day planned where I wasn't going to be at school, whether it was like union days, district days, personal days, sick days. Like I wasn't spending a full week in that school because it was just, we just had no support, and it was hard. It was tough.
Yeah. And you're not the only one. This is a theme we heard from folks who taught during the pandemic. They were so grateful to be at home for lots of different reasons. Sometimes it was because the administration was on their back. Sometimes it was because of like lots of different things, but it was just being able to be in the safety of their homes. That was just like so healing for people. And it's interesting that you say that this idea of like not having to be at school. I remember I was walking from class one day with one of my good friends, and Dr. Cristal Cisneros, shout out to her, when we were in our doc program. And I remember her saying like, okay, well, MLK is coming up, and then after that we have this. So I have a day off of that, and then I have a Monday. And I said, this is after I had left teaching. I said, you can't live your life like that.
That's right.
You can't live your life from like vacation day to vacation day, because it's a lot of days between those vacation days and weekends, right? And she no longer is in the classroom, is doing something that she really truly loves. Shout out to her. But that's the thing, that little like, if I could just make it a Tuesday and Thursday's a half day, and how can we? Our life is not full of half days like that.
No, and it shows. Like I was miserable at my job. So how can I can't be that effective of a teacher if I'm like miserable showing up. So it was tough. And a lot of it, again, like it wasn't the students, right? It was the adults who made it hard. And I just like got tired of like having to just advocate so much. Like it was like more than normal, more than usual. I felt like people weren't listening to me. They weren't listening to families. I was like, did you ask the family? What did the mom say? Oh, the mom said that she recommends this, but y'all gonna do the opposite.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it was tough. A lot of times it's like, okay, just go in your room, close your door, do whatever you need to do to get through the day that kids are learning. But and talking about admin on your back, I was like getting like evaluations, like low scores, like never had scores low like this before. And I just feel like, what is going on? So I was also grateful that DPS was like, you don't have to, we didn't have to keep those scores that year.
Yeah. You were in one of the pilot schools.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But it doesn't add to it. It's not the type of thing that you're like, I'm doing what's right for these kids, right? And working for DPS, I could say that there's this philosophy that students are first and a core value, and that at times is challenged or contradicted by the practices of how we evaluate teachers. And I think as we have experienced is in particularly harmful to educators of color, by Black educators in particular.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. All right. So I guess the next question, you're not in that classroom anymore. You're not in that school anymore. So the next is like, what was that thing, that straw? What was that decision that you said, okay, it's time to do something else? How did you come about that decision?
Yeah, it was when I was counting down to the next day I had off. I was like, I can't continue to do this. And so I knew pretty early, like by January of that year, that I wasn't returning to that school. I thought maybe I would teach at another school, and I actually did get hired at another school. And I was with them during summer 2020 as a team lead and a kindergarten intervention teacher. But I actually ended up accepting another job in central office prior to that school year starting. But yeah, I was just that lack of support. And I was just like, I was like, I don't like the leadership at this school. We are clashing, and this is not going to end well for me if I stay there. So that I left. Mm-hmm.
Was central office better?
It was at first. Yeah, it was like I had a really cool position. I can't remember the official name. Oh, leadership pipeline development. And my biggest role was I facilitated the aspiring teacher leader of color cohort. And so I got to meet with teachers all through the district who wanted to get into senior team lead positions. And in DPS, senior team lead positions are the least diverse of all leadership positions at schools.
Oh,
Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but I did not know that.
Right, because principals are the one who hire for those roles,
Yep,
right?
yep.
They tend to hire people who look like them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I love that work, and I love like on the back end, figuring out ways that we can dismantle that system that is allowing the principals to hire white women in those roles, because I mean, like we have so many talented teachers who I think would stay longer if they had the opportunity to be in the classroom part of the time and to coach part of the time, right? But this wasn't offered to a lot of our teachers of color. So I loved that work, and it was virtual. My whole first year I was doing that from home. But it was the second year of that job. What ended up happening first, I got another offer to do what I'm currently doing now. But I knew it was time to go, because what I saw, DPS sent out this survey to central office staff about like, do we want to continue with this flexible work schedule so you can work from home some days, work in office some days. And like majority of staff was like, yeah, we want to continue with this flex schedule. And so the like executive leadership was like, yeah, so we're going to return to office 5 days a week. But
wow.
Sent the survey results out to us showing that we asked
for the other
thing. And I was like, ooh, time to go.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. That would do it. And, there's so much there with the survey piece. Let's hear what you think. Let's go. And you saying this makes me think about all the times that I've heard as a parent say, hey, here's a survey about your kid's school, or we're doing this. And for my daughter was an APS for a while, we're changing the logo, vote on this, vote on that. And to think that there's a possibility that folks just did what they wanted to do anyway.
Yep.
Like, how many folks just know that? I'm like, I'm not voting. They're going to do what they want to do. And then here it is that you're sitting here. And like you said, they had enough gumption, I'll say, to show you the results and still go what they wanted.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say there was a new leader in DPS at the time. And that wasn't in line with a lot of decisions that were happening from that leader. So I wasn't shocked. And as we see, like things in DPS, especially central office, are still in flux. And as I talked to a former colleague recently, she said, yeah, there's the Black exodus, right? She was like, there are a lot of Black central office employees that were let go. Their positions were eliminated.
Yeah. Pause for a second. Say that word again.
Black exodus.
Black exodus.
Yeah. Like the Black exodus.
Oh, I get it. Kevin, you have something to say about that.
I mean, I've not heard. I think Branta. So I don't know if you coined this or if you get to trademark it, but I have witnessed it. I've seen it, as we say. I've seen it.
Yeah, I remember when I was in CCSD, we had, I guess now we call it Blacksidus, where there were tons of doctors in what we didn't call central office, but central office, who Dr. Cobb and lots of other folks who were up there, Dr. Kennedy, and everyone left together. Like within 1 year, all of them left. And I think there's only a few folks left, like maybe Mike Giles. I know he's still there. There's a couple more people, but so many folks left and they were just over it. So I love that. Blacksidus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, there we go. All right. Might be the title of the episode.
Yes, please. And so I guess our next question, and after this question, we'll go to break, but our next question is, what do you think that schools, districts, principals, central office can do to keep Black folks in all the positions of education, right? Coming back to schools? What do you, if there is a solution that you think exists, what do you think that solution is?
Asia, you'll probably appreciate this. I just submitted a paper about this yesterday for my grad school program. So one of the classes I'm taking is called Human Capital, Strategic Human Capital. And so I did a lot of thinking and research around it recently. I think one of the first things is having networks of BIPOC teachers, right? So like you cannot have just one in your building and think that that one is going to keep coming back, right? Like I know personally for me, that was such a struggle when I was the only one. And that's actually, they wanted me to come back, that charter school. They were shocked. And I was like, no, I'm leaving. And they're like, oh, we're going to hire another Black teacher.
Wow. They knew.
Yeah.
No, we promise.
Yeah. And then I left and they had hired that other Black teacher who I'm friends with. So she was like, Branta, they did the same thing to you.
You left me. Now I'm here.
Like, I'm the only Black teacher, right? So like, not having one or two, like you need a genuine number of teachers with similar identities, and especially that share the identities of the students. So I think that's one. Layered on top of that, that also includes leadership, right? Like people need to see themselves in leadership positions and know that their leaders are supporting them. I think around like making sure that staff feel heard and valued. Like I was just, and like we respect their professionalism. Cause I was just like, for me, I was young, but I was like, listen, I got these degrees from these schools. Like I have experiences, like I'm not stupid, I'm not any of these things, but like y'all are treating me like I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Like that I can't make decisions for myself, for my classrooms, for my students. So that's something that I think that's like a mind shift that has to happen in schooling and districts. Obviously compensate teachers, right?
Yes.
Pay them what they're worth. As far as the union side, I can talk about this, not the union, right? Yep. But like I experienced a lot of anti-Black racism when I was a member of DCTA, right? Yep. Or I had friends who experienced it and me just being like, what? Like we're paying money for this. So like unions have to get it together too, like just like really supporting teachers of color, and particularly in this case, from my experience around Black teachers. I was a part of the Black Educators Caucus.
Yep, shout out. That's how we know. In all transparency, that's how me and Branta know each other. It's the Black Educators Caucus.
Yeah, and that was hard work, right? Like we were like fighting the union to fight the district, right? It was like it was too many battles happening at once. And it's like, all we want to do is educate the children. And so I think definitely like unions can step up how they're supporting their staff. I think having like really clear hiring practices, right? So like this whole backdoor hiring, I'm gonna hire my friend. no, like we need to be very transparent on how we hire for certain positions, for all positions, so that people can know the pathways and what they need to do in order to prepare themselves for positions that they want to go into later.
I mean, I love that. From our experiences in the BEC, I think the union part of it, I can just relate to as someone who's still there, and we at our work, I think Branta yielded a lot of it was still not where we want to be, but I think it's yielded some things that we heard that that we talked about that we know needed to be addressed in our union and inequities. And then the aspects, I feel like Asia of what we need to see in schools are what we always hear. It's more people that are like us, more understanding of our perspectives, the expertise that we bring, and that's what I love. I've always loved about you, Branta, is, you are a scholar. You don't mess around with it. You got the credentials to support it all. Like, we should be listening to folks like you. And it just figures that there'd be building leaders that weren't willing to do that. And building and district leaders.
Right. Like, do I need to tape my resume on my shirt? Like, it was.
I don't want to check you with my college degrees, but if I have to, I mean, I can. We can do that.
Right.
Yeah, dang. Thank you for that. That's a good list. I really appreciate this part about the union too, because I know that a lot of times when we ask that question, people really focus in on the the school maybe, or the admin side of it, and not necessarily talk to union specifically. And a whole different show for a whole different time, like stories about the ways that you experience racism by the hands of the union. Listen, you and I can do another episode just on that, right? But we won't go there today. All right, so we're going to go to break, and we come back, we're going to answer or ask our favorite 2 questions. Stick around, folks. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're back, folks, with our final 2 questions. These are my favorite because Kevin's in the school space, and we know that even though I'm trying to get him out of the school space, he's in the school space.
The Black Moses of education, Dr.
Right.
Asian Lyons, ladies and gentlemen.
Dr. Asian Lyons. So these are my questions. So tell us, you no longer in that traditional educator space, traditional teaching space. What are you doing now? Tell us all the things. We'd love to know.
Mm-hmm. Well, one, I'm back in school, and I'm actually in the same program that Asia recently graduated from. So super excited to
I feel like all my heroes are going through that program. I feel like I'm being led in a path in life.
Listen, come on, Kevin.
Be great.
Yeah. I was like, maybe people will stop saying no to Dr. Lockett. I don't know. Maybe.
That's right. Show enough. Show enough.
Right. So I'm enjoying being a student again. And at the same time, I also made the wild decision to also open a school. So
let's go.
The executive leader of 5280 Freedom School. We recently had our charter approved. Yes. And so we are opening in fall 2023 to kindergarten, first grade students. And we're going to start enrollment January 13th, and then the first round of enrollment will end on February 14th. So if you are interested, reach out, come to our events, and definitely enroll your student, because the spots are going to fill up fast. And actually, one of our pre-opening conditions is that we have to fill all 52 spots during the first round of school choice and DPS. So,
all right, kindergartners, first graders.
Yeah.
And tell the people about 5280 Freedom School, the mission and vision, those important parts.
Yeah. And I'll start with a little history, because history.
Yep.
So the Freedom School actually started back when Asia was still a member of BLM 5280, and we were all in the Ed Squad. And one meeting, we were like, let's just do the summer camp this summer. And we did that. It was summer 2018. I call it like the one room school.
Yes.
Facts. It was hot as hell in there, girl. We was doing it.
We didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have outdoor play space. We were newbies in that. But
Yes.
the next summer we got it together. Asia was supported us that next summer too. And we've grown every summer. We've doubled in enrollment.
That's what's up.
This past summer we had a wait list for kids who wanted to join the program. And then from that summer camp, families were like, we need more opportunities like this. And students were like, I would love a school that was like this, right? Like a school with Black teachers and
yes,
who love me. And I mean, the kids didn't say that, but I always think about like, we had teachers who held the kids accountable, right? And had high expectations of the kids, but it was delivered in a very loving way. So it was well received by the children, right? So like, it's amazing to me to see the interactions that our students have with our teachers, right? In such a short amount of time, like these relationships that are built are like genuine, right? And authentic. And there's no like playbook on how to do this, right? Like this is just something where you have to have the passion for it, and you have to like believe in Black kids and show up that way, right? And so that's our school is all about. Like we center Black values, principles, and knowledge. And we're open to, so anyone can join us. But it's centered around the Black experience and really just like affirming our students for who they are and letting them know that like, yes, you can show up how you want to show up and you will be loved in this space. You're being loved just for who you are. And another thing that I love about our school is we are going to offer universal gifted and talented instruction.
Yes.
Students, right? Because I'm like, all of these babies are brilliant, and it's in the schools where the brilliance is just squashed, right?
Yep.
So we're gonna uplift their brilliance and help them explore their brilliance in different ways, and utilize GT strategies in our practices, but also having like a talent block for them too, to actually like experience GT learning, right?
Yes.
So super excited about that.
I love that. I love that idea. I've, I started my career at Maury Middle School, and somehow ended up teaching in the gifted and talented program at Maury, and was open to a whole new world of like educational processes. That was my first year, like hadn't really studied it. But the biggest realization was that, Black and brown kids were completely underrepresented. And, the idea, and also the other contradiction or kind of contrast that it had was what our traditional kids were going through, our neighborhood kids at the time at Maury, the education they were receiving. And I love this idea of giving kids the chance to explore their curiosities, because that's what happens at private schools. This is like the root of every great story of individuals, like the people, whatever it is, the field that they're in, they had the opportunity and ability to access expertise and practice these skills at a young age. And so I love that. The idea of, all of your kids, that's big, right? Universal GT education for all. Because like, I believe we're all gifted in some way. We all got the gift. Yeah. It's just sometimes we never even realize it or never give the opportunity to show it. Or even like when we do show it, we don't realize it because of how it's used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, having that space to explore, take risk, fail, learn from the failures, not be punished for the failures. And this goes back to like my growing up in Miami. So I was in GT in elementary through high school, and the students in the GT program looked like me, right? So it was like coming to Colorado. I was like, what is going on? It's like, so through my personal experience, I was like, no. I know that there are brilliant Black people out there, right? It's like, we're not just like 1 out of 30. Like, no, like we had, I think it was about like 20 of us that were in our GT program when I was in elementary school. And then middle school, like we actually had, like they would track the students. And so like our cohort was a whole GT cohort.
Yep. Right? All together.
Of
Black kids.
Black kids, like 30 Black kids, right?
And you know what? To this point, you know what the identified GT kids at Moore used to say when they get identified from the other programs? We don't want to go in there. Why? We don't want to be with all those white kids.
Right.
Well, that's they weird. They not like us.
Right. And it shouldn't be that way.
And in fact, like the longer they as they grew, they realized, oh, I might be into the same conversations that they're having.
Yeah.
That's who I am, you know? So, but I think it's beautiful when the kids have to see themselves. Like it's a group of us. We all like this. We all are bright kids.
Right.
And we can all challenge each other to grow and push each other's thinking.
Yes. No, I agree. Yep. So yeah, super excited. Our program is also culturally responsive and sustaining, and based on the work of culturally responsive teaching in the brain by Zaretta Hammond, as well as Cultivating Genius by Goldie Muhammad. So, just really we're developing a program that will center the most marginalized students, right? And we know that when the most marginalized students get their needs met, everyone gets their needs met. So yeah, if you're interested, again, we're opening fall 23, and we'll be located on Welton Street. So
all right.
Yeah, we're gonna be
in the Points, historic.
Yes, historic. Yes, in a historic building. It's where we're starting out. So it's exciting. I'm excited for this work. I enjoy doing this work every day, even in late evening, right? I'm not having that feeling like I did my last year teaching, where I was like down the days.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. This is so good. So good. And I will say, I do have a question. So you talked about your summer program, the Freedom School summer camp. When you all are preparing to start the school in the fall, this summer 2023, will you have camp too? Or will you be kind of holding off because school is going to be starting?
I think we would have an angry mob of children if we didn't have summer camp.
All right.
Facts.
So we will definitely still have summer camp families. Don't worry. We will offer summer camp still. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so our last question.
Let's go.
Last question, favorite question, best question. What's bringing you joy these days?
I think definitely is working on this school with community, and just like having a hopeful future, right? Like being hopeful about the future, that there is going to be a place where kids are loved and treated as humans. And I'm excited about that. That brings me so much joy. I also have a golden doodle puppy too, but oh my gosh, he is just the cutest little thing. And he brings me so much joy too.
I love that.
We love the pets on this podcast. You know.
Yes, he was like one of my gifts to myself when I moved. I had purchased a home, and I was like going through like a crazy breakup, and I was like, I'm gonna get myself a golden doodle, and that's what I did. So.
What's his name?
Jay Winter. He has two names. Jay
Winter.
Shout out to Jay Winter.
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds like a new up and coming R&B star. Kids will be talking about him. You heard Jay Winter?
Yeah.
That's so true. Oh man. Any final remarks, Kevin, before we wrap it up for the evening?
Just Branta, thank you so much for being here with us. It's I think this is one of my favorite exit interviews, because I think ultimately the inspiration of what you're doing with the 5280 school, with the camp, but moving to the school, I think is I think the ultimate goal, is how can we build systems for us, by us, to meet the needs of our kids. And I'm just so impressed and proud to have worked and collaborated with you, and I look to support you, and can't wait till you got secondary positions open at the school.
We'll get you out of the classroom though, will you?
Yeah. We'll see. See, I mean, that's a whole new world. Oh man, shoot. Might not want to leave. Might have to pull me out there.
Yeah,
Asia.
facts.
Right.
Facts, right. Don't have me in there visiting.
We get Asia back in there.
Yeah.
Mess around, turn Asia back to the old her.
Yeah.
I know, right? New and improved though, also.
That's right.
All right. Well, it's been another great episode. We appreciate you all listening. Again, support the 5280 Freedom School, enroll your students, tell your friends and family. We'd love to have you. And Branta, last question, can they email you? How do they find out how to enroll? What's the process of that looks like?
Yeah, so if they visit our website, 5280freedomschool.com, if they fill out the intent to enroll form, it's non-binding, but that gets you on our email list. If you want to just email us separately, you can email us at blm5280freedomschool@gmail.com. And then we're also on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at 5280 Freedom School.
All right. Well, you heard it from her. I hope that you all have the opportunity to get down there and enroll, get on the website. It's been another great episode of the Freedom School. Look at me. It is a Freedom School. Actually, the exit interview. We will talk to you all later on. See you later. Bye.